Welcome to PAR Podcast, episode 74.42. PAR Podcast is an audio supplement for Public Administration Review, the premier professional journal in the field of public administration. In 2015, PAR will celebrate 75 years of furthering public administration research, theory, and practice. This episode features comments by Adam Dahl, a PhD candidate in political science at the University of Minnesota. His co-author is Joe Soss, Cowles Chair for the Study of Public Service at the University of Minnesota, where he holds faculty positions in the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, Political Science, and Sociology. In this episode, Dahl reflects on their research article titled Neoliberalism for the Common Good, Public Value Governance, and the Downsizing of Democracy. This article is part of the Symposium on Creating Public Value in a Multi-Sector Shared Power World, which can be found in Public Administration Review, Issue 74, Volume 4. Mr. Dahl provides an overview of the article's conclusions about the limits of public value governance and its potential to be assimilated into the dominant political projects of neoliberalism.
Hello, this is Adam Dahl, and I'm a PhD candidate in political science at the University of Minnesota. My co-author, Joe Soss, is the Cowles Chair of Public Service at the Humphrey Institute of Public Affairs, also at the University of Minnesota. So our paper addresses what we think is an increasingly complex relationship between participatory and deliberative theories of democracy on the one hand, and then models of public value governance on the other. As readers will likely note, the concept of public value has emerged over the last 2 decades, largely as a reaction to neoliberal models of governance that privilege economic individualism and market logics over the pursuit of the common good. So in response to this, theorists of public administration have claimed that public value governance significantly deepens democracy and tackles the democratic deficit plaguing modern liberal states. And so part of the idea here is that public value governance acts as a form of what democratic theorists have called governance-driven democratization. And what this fancy term means is that we simply locate democracy not just in the formal channels of elections and governmental institutions, but also in processes of service provision, policy formulation, and policy implementation. But in spite of these claims about its democratizing potential, the relationship between public value governance and important currents of democratic theory remains somewhat murky. And so our paper explores these tensions and poses questions and limitations to the framework along 2 lines. The first of these is that we question the extent to which public value governance challenges the economic logic of neoliberalism. Although these frameworks certainly oppose laissez-faire efforts to roll back the state, they derive much of their logic from market templates. So, for instance, the effort to incorporate performance measures into the framework largely draws on models of corporate governance. These resulting parallels, we argue, make public value much less of a challenge to neoliberalism than one would surmise upon first glance. The second line of questioning that we pursue more explicitly concerns the relationship between contemporary democratic theory and public value governance, which we argue are somewhat in tension with each other. And there are 2 central problems here. The first is that models of public value governance leave foundational questions of power and inequality largely out of their framework. And so the consequence of this is that they subsume deliberative and participatory procedures within a framework that leaves broader inequalities and imbalances in political power undisturbed. The problem with many deliberative and participatory reforms, such as participatory budgeting, for instance, is that they can often be integrated into governance frameworks in ways that do not lead to the substantive democratization of political power. The second problem is that there are 2 currents that are 2 currents of the framework that are somewhat at odds with each other. So on the one hand, you have attempts to enhance the performance of governance by elaborating benchmarks for valuation. And then the second, you have attempts to incorporate participatory and deliberative procedures into the framework so as to enhance the ability of regular citizens to influence processes of governance. The problem here is that combining these two into a single framework potentially subordinates open-ended democratic contestation and deliberation to the production of specified ends. So before models of public value governance can deliver on the promise of their democratizing potential, we argue they need to address some of these limitations and ambiguities.
This concludes PAR Podcast, episode 74.42. To listen to additional episodes and learn more about Public Administration Review, please visit us online at publicadministrationreview.org. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at PA Review. Thanks for listening.